Welcome to Spark Faith with me, Dr. Kris Sargent. This show is about renewed health, rooted in truth, and restored by grace. What does finding health look like for you? Do you have a vision for your future self and a way to get there? I'm Dr. Kris, and after 33 years in functional medicine and a lifelong journey through brain health, weight loss, hormones, mindset, and faith, I know that real transformation doesn't come from willpower or white knuckling your way to wellness. It comes from gratitude, honoring your body as the temple that God created. This show is about body stewardship, not shame. It's about rewiring your mindset, your metabolism, and your spirit to find lasting health without the grind. I'll help you cut through the noise, see opportunities instead of obstacles, and finally live the healthy, purposeful life you were created for. Let's spark faith and transformation together. Spark Faith starts now. Hey, y'all. I am Dr. Kris Sargent. Welcome back to the Spark Faith Show. Today, we are going to take a little bit of a left turn. If I am completely honest, y'all know I try to be as transparent as possible. My wedding is just in a couple weeks, and you're probably going to get sick of hearing that probably from last week and this week. But anyway, so I am feeling a little bit, stressed, right? And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So stress isn't always what you think it is, right? And so what if stress isn't the thing that's actually hurting you? You're going to be like, what? That is like heresy, right? In the wellness culture, of course it's stress. And everyone blames cortisol, stress, busy schedules, right? But stress itself isn't bad or good, right? We assign that meaning every single time we say something about stress, right? We're assigning that meaning. So let's think about this, right? Exercise is stress. Learning is stress. Getting married is stress. Having children is stress. Starting a business is stress. Serving a church is stress. Even excitement, right, is stressful. And the body does not separate that into good or bad because we all know, right? Like, let's pick any one of those things that I just talked about, like exercise, right? That has good stress and it can have bad stress the way we think about good and bad. So the body isn't about whether it's good or bad. It's more like, hey, can I adapt to that stress? So, and honestly, a little bit more importantly, and we've touched on this in a few episodes, is can I recover? Right? How are we going to recover from the stress that we have? So today I'm going to help you understand that your body is actually built for stress. And we can normalize this to some extent because, yes, we are in an age where stress is we feel like we are super stressed. But I was having this conversation the other day, like, okay, so take me out of my neighborhood where this is just me, right? And where I kind of have what I need and I don't want for all the basic needs, right? And plunk me in an environment where I have to go and hunt for food to feed my kids, right? Both environments are stressful, just in different ways, right? So our ancestors have survived because they've adapted, and we're surviving because we're adapting. And we adapt to temperature fluctuations, food intake, movement, emotions, relationships, right? Deadlines, uncertainty. So adaptation is really a survival mechanism. Having stress is not some kind of evidence that something is wrong, right? Stress is evident that you're alive. Yeah. So it's like a heart monitor in the hospital does not show, you don't want a straight line, right? We want to see variability. We want to see movement. We want to see responding to a treatment or that your heart is working properly. That's adaptation, right? And life requires fluctuation. I think that the real problem here is not the fluctuation, right? It's the accumulation. And, I can feel myself like, yes, yes, ma'am. It is definitely the accumulation that that is the problem. It's not the one not necessarily, because I know that there are tragic events and tragic traumatic things that happen in people's life, but in general, it is not the one stressful event that breaks us, right? Maybe you had one of those horrible stressful events, but that is also speaking into your life now every time a new stressor comes along. And that's just the base of accumulation, right? It's just accumulating that. And your body is going to keep a running tally, right? It's keeping score. There's a whole book about that. I did not write it. It's a great book. So it's not just work stress or family stress, right? It's poor sleep stress and the accumulation that creates inflammation. It is loneliness, because being lonely is like one of our top stressors in this country right now, right? We're supposed to be more connected than ever. And yet we are also the one of the most lonely societies on the planet. What about unresolved conflict, right? Do you need to forgive somebody? Do you have something kind of brewing with your boss or one of your coworkers or one of your kids or one of your parents? Understandable. What about grief? Ooh, this has been a big one for me, right? And there's two sides to that, right? Of grief. So, what about decision overload? Yeah, I'm planning a wedding. There's a lot of decisions and things that I didn't want to think about. What about rushing? Like I just rush, rushing out the door. I'm eating in the car. I'm running 15 errands. Like, what about rushing? Right? The ex Your body experiences every single one of those as a demand. And like I said, I'm planning a wedding, right? So, kind of moving into marriage, running my business, still in seminary, recording my shows, helping my clients. I've got two adult kids living with me currently. One, my baseball player, the other one, my artist. She's getting ready to move out. So we have this change, right? Like there's something, none of that is bad. Some of it is sad, some of it is happy, right? That grief, both sides. Most are blessings, right? But there's still demands. And demands require recovery. So, recovery was not something that was kind of allowed in my household. My mom did not ever sit down to a fault, right? And so I'm having to unlearn, continually having to unlearn that recovery is not laziness, right? So if I slow down, I'm being lazy. If I slow down, I'll never get everything done. But physiologically, recovery is where the adaptation is going to happen. So it's like you have to recover in order for your body to adapt. Otherwise, it's just going to keep unraveling. So, you think muscle is built at the gym, but it's actually built in recovery, right? Memory is consolidated during sleep. So you're having memory problems, you got that brain fog, sleep, right? Hormones cannot recalibrate without sleep and without recovery time, right? Cortisol up and down. We've talked a lot about this, blood sugar up and down. We've talked about that too. But without sleep and recovery, we cannot recalibrate our hormones. It's not going to happen. And the immune system really performs much of its work in recovery. It's just creating inflammation. The faster we go, the more inflammation we're creating. So stress creates that challenge to the body, but recovery creates the growth. Okay. And there's probably a spiritual piece to this too, right? Like we don't learn our lessons necessarily when we're at the top of the mountain. We learn them when we're in the valley and having to slow down and having to handle and deal with things that we don't necessarily want to, but that really creates that space for growth. So without recovery, all you really have is just this accumulated strain and stress on your systems, on your body, on your joints, on all the body parts, and then also in your brain and in those interoreceptors that we started to talk about last week. And we're going to talk more about interoception in the upcoming weeks. So, recovery deficit is something that nobody really talks about. Nobody wants to slow down. Nobody wants to not to change the way that they're living in busyness, right? So maybe instead of asking, how stressed am I? What if you asked a different question? Because I've had to slow down and ask the same question. How about, how recovered am I? And my coach is working with me on this too. Like, do you feel recovered after you sleep? How sore are you after your workouts? How long does that soreness last? Are you not recovering? Are you doing too much at the gym? Are you feeding yourself well? How recovered am I? How recovered are you? So that question kind of changes the perspective, right? Because recovery is not just sleeping more. It is that, it might be that. But like physical recovery requires sleep, it still requires movement. Doesn't mean you just lay down on the couch and not move, right? Maybe just walk for a day instead of hitting the gym every day, right? I'm at a 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 2 off. So like that's my gym schedule right now. But on those off days, I'm not laying in the bed, right? Like I'm still getting 10,000 steps in and doing the things that I need to do. I'm just not pushing hard at the gym. I'm allowing those muscles to recover from the work that they had to do. And then, of course, nourishment, right? That's another part of physical recovery. What about emotional recovery? Right? How do we recover from a deep, heavy emotional time? Well, one of the ways that I like to recover, and this may seem trite and silly, but laughter, right? If I get down for too long, like I just need to laugh and remember to have fun, right? How do you have fun? When was the last time you had any fun? Right? What about connection? Do you isolate? Because if that's your tendency, then connection is honestly, that's the answer. And it's the hard answer because if you're like, oh no, I don't want to see people, emotional recovery requires some connection, even if it's just a one-on-one slow down coffee with your best friend or a friend of some kind. Maybe it's finding a therapist that you can connect with and relate the issues to and process all of those feelings, like feel all the feelings, feel them all the way through. They last about 90 seconds, right? When they hit your body and you're like, oh, I feel this. It's okay. Take a few breaths, feel it, figure out where it's coming from, what triggered it. And then you can set it aside once you've gone all the way through feeling it, right? What about mental recovery, right? This decision fatigue kind of thing. I'm going to say the big B word, boundaries. Yep. Super hard to keep, super hard to create without being toxic, right? We're not talking about toxic boundaries, we're talking about cutting people out of your life. You may need to do that, but not without a therapist. Um, that's just my opinion. What about some quiet time where you don't have your AirPods on and you're not really listening to music? What if you're just sitting outside in the grass or sitting outside or walking around outside, right? What about margin, right? We don't print books all the way from one side of the page to the other. There's a margin around it to make it readable. So, how can you find some margin in your life? It's really hard to do. But when we don't take that time for margin, we're missing actually a big chunk of our life because things are flying past us and we're not in any of it. We're thinking about the next thing that we're going to do. And that just creates like this whole fast forward, future pacing anxiety. And we're making decisions that we can't even make. So we also need to make fewer decisions for a little bit, even if it's 15 or 20 minutes a day, right? And then what about spiritual recovery? What does that even look like, right? What if it's prayer? What if it's reading a devotional and like sitting with it and seeing where that lands in your body and feeling it all the way through? What if it's hitting the worship music in your car or during your workout instead of whatever you might listen to instead, or on your walk, right? What if you do a prayer walk for 10 minutes of your 20-minute walk, right? Or reading scripture, right? Just being with God. And, here's the thing. Many of y'all aren't really, I know you think this, right? You're suffering from a stress problem, but it's actually just a recovery deficit, right? There hasn't been enough recovery in your world. And I can say that from experience now because I have had to recover. I took a deload week a couple weeks ago. I didn't work out. I ate my good food. I just let my body rest. That doesn't mean I laid in bed. I still did my 10,000 steps. I just didn't do them very fast. Right. And so, one of the things that I feel like sometimes we overlook, sometimes in scripture even, is that rhythm. And I've alluded to it. We've talked a little bit about rhythm, but creation had a rhythm, right? This thing was made, then this thing was made, then this thing was made. It took a week, right? Rome wasn't built in a day, kind of thing, right? Like we have to take time. So remember that there is this rhythm. After creation came Sabbath, right? God rested. Are you resting? Because God did. I know. I should put a sign up in my, like on my bathroom mirror. God rested. Have you? Right? What about seasons, right? That's just another rhythm that's in our life. Things shift just even slightly. Maybe your kids are home, or, you know, my son is home from college. That's a season. It's summer. So what do you do different in the summer versus the winter? Do you have a winter strategy? Oh, I love to be outside when it's nice outside and I like to walk, but the minute it gets icky or we have 5 or 6 days of rain like we just had here in Tennessee, like what are you going to do? Right? Do you have a seasonal strategy for walking? I just end up walking in the rain. My dog does not care. He does not care. So I've learned I just walk in the rain. I'm not going to melt. I'm not. Right. And I did that up north too. And maybe that's crazy, but whatever. But there's this work and then rest. Even Jesus, like, right? He regularly withdrew. And you can see it all the way through the Gospels, particularly, right? Like Jesus withdrew. He needed he needed a beat, right? He needed to take a beat. So that's not because he was weak, right? It's because he wanted to reconnect with God. He wanted that connection that he knew was really part of his design. It's part of God's design for us. And so I think it's just really, really important to put those rhythms of do things and rest, do things and rest, right? We're not designed for this nonstop output. We're just not designed that way, right? God designed these beautiful cycles into our life where we exert ourselves and then we can be renewed. And that's what recovery is really all about, is taking time to recover, right? All of our athletes do it. Every single athlete I know, and I live with one. So even between sets, right? There's a place of recovery. And when I first started lifting weights, I felt like all I did was stand around and wait for my next set. But when you start to understand that waiting is what is allowing your muscles to be rehydrated, to be refueled, to get ready for the next set that you're about to lift, and you want to gain strength, then those recovery times actually increase, right? As your strength is getting higher and higher and higher, and you're lifting more weight, it takes a little bit more to recover so that you can actually lift your next set better. But you have to allow for that time to do that, right? So, exertion and renewal, work and rest, giving and receiving. How you doing on that? Do you give, resent, right? Is that your pattern? Because I know I can have those patterns. And certainly being a mom, going to be a wife, right? I run my business, I serve my clients. However, if I don't take time to receive, even if it's from myself, if it's from God, if it's from a girlfriend, if I don't receive from my therapist, right? We have this working relationship. I'm in a class where I have a mentor right now. So it's a very give and take kind of situation. But if we have to receive and really build in order to give. And I know that that is so cliche that you can't fill somebody else's cup if your cup is empty, right? Like if your pitcher is empty. And I know you probably just turned me off because you're like, I don't want to hear it. Yeah, you probably don't. And what is that? What stressor is that causing in your life? Because you're running this resentment runs in the background and you're snippy and you're doing these other things instead of really just allowing yourself to rest and process and not like just keep doing and doing and doing. All right. So stress and recovery, because here's the thing. We talk about stewardship a lot around here because I think that the key of what makes what I do different is that I want to teach about stewardship of the physical body, but the physical body includes the mental part of that physical body, the emotional part of that physical body, the spiritual part of that physical body. Stewardship isn't like learning how to avoid stress. Stewardship is really learning how to recover well. And so that's the journey, right? That over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about recovery a lot more. And we're going to talk about today is like foundation, right? We start with F for foundation. Next week, we're going to talk about regulation and recovery. The following week, we're going to talk about last week we talked about foundation. Today we're talking about regulation. Next week we're going to talk about energy, right? Today was regulation. We're regulating. Next week we're going to talk about energy recovery, and that's really what we need to do. But that energy recovery requires a lot of the same things that our regulation requires, because it is part of recovery, is allowing your mitochondria to recover as well. They can't just keep spinning and spinning and spinning without some sort of recovery time. And so, yeah, our next episode is going to be about energy. And because here's the thing, what happens when recovery doesn't keep up with demand? If we keep doing the output, right? But there's nothing coming in. It's that empty well, right? And that's where really fatigue enters this conversation. So on our next episode, we are going to be talking about fatigue, right? And what nobody told you about fatigue. Because here's the thing, fatigue is not always about a lack of energy, right? Sometimes it's the accumulated cost of carrying too many demands for way too long, right? And then you crash. And none of us are any good from that place of crash. None of us. And you can get up, and I've done it, and you can keep going from this place of exhaustion. And I can tell you from experience, there's going to be a day that you're not really going to be able to get up well. And you're going to realize that you're not as invincible as you thought you were. Ah, it's hard for me to take in, right? But I can tell you that it's worth the recovery that I'm learning. So that's why I'm here. Like, I want you to really understand that recovery is helping your body regulate and adapt to the stressors that sometimes we choose them, right? Sometimes they choose us and we have to just roll with what life gives us. However, I think that there's some new skills that you can learn about this recovery piece and taking some time to really looking at what's in your life. And I've said this a lot, but because I've had to do it too. Like, what's important for today, what has to get done today, and what can really be put on the back burner and maybe never get done because it's not in the big scheme of things, it's not going to matter. So sometimes, our stress is really just that accumulated cost of carrying too many demands for way too long. So, excuse me. Stress is not evidence that something is wrong. All right. Stress is just part of being human. And the real question is whether we're creating enough recovery, right? Sleep, downtime, those rhythms of recovery that we talked about, exertion, and then rest, right? The real question is whether we're creating enough recovery, restoration, and rhythm to support the demands that are in your life right now. And I hope this resonates with you because I feel like it's something that doesn't really get talked about. And I don't do surface conversations very well if you haven't figured that out. I want you to look at what is happening in your life. And these are not easy conversations to have. And I just think it's really an important conversation to have with yourself and with people that are around you that are important to you about, hey, I need to do some recovery here. What can I delegate? What can I just jettison? Right? Like, I just don't need to do this anymore. Exercise is not one of those, y'all. Just so you know. Meal prep is not one of those. Just so you know. All right. But there are certainly some things that you can move around. So again, stress is not the evidence that something is wrong. Stress is just part of being human. And the real question is whether we're creating enough recovery, restoration, and rhythm to support the demands of your life. So here we are, right? Renewing your health, rooted in truth, and restored by grace. And if you love these conversations, pop me a message on social. I am at Dr. Kris Sargent everywhere. You can find my new episodes on YouTube. And so that's that. Hit subscribe, hit like, seek me out. I do an awesome and fun, not salesy, first call with people who are interested in becoming clients. So we usually I want to hear about what's going on with you, right? So until next time, y'all, give yourself some grace, find some recovery space, right? I love you so much, and I will see you next week. We'll talk about energy. You've been listening to Spark Faith with me, Dr. Kris Sargent. This show is about renewed health, rooted in truth, and restored by grace. Tune in every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific on the Transformation Talk Radio for more simple, faith-fueled steps to live the vision God placed in your heart. Are you ready to take the next step? Schedule a discovery call or connect with me at drkrissargent.com. That's DRKRIS Sargent.com. While you're there, download my free ebook, Endless Energy, the 6 non-negotiable keys to endless energy, and sign up for an upcoming masterclass. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share the show, and I'd love to connect with you on social media at Dr. Kris Sargent. Let's keep sparking faith and transformation together. Can't wait to see y'all next time.